Greetings and welcome back to More Hymn Stories, Episode 2, A Shelter in the Time of Storm. The Lord's our rock, in Him we hide, a shelter in the time of storm. Secure whatever ill betide, a shelter in the time of storm. Oh, Jesus is the rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in a time of storm. A shade by day, defense by night, a shelter in the time of storm. No fears alarm, no foes affright, a shelter in the time of storm. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. The raging storms may round us beat, a shelter in the time of storm. We'll never leave our safe retreat, a shelter in the time of storm. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. O rock divine, O refuge dear, a shelter in the time of storm. Be thou our helper ever near, a shelter in the time of storm. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Oh, Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. A Shelter in the Time of Storm. The author is Vernon J. Charlesworth. Was born in 1838, and they're unsure as to when he passed away, with alteration. The composer for the musical score is Ira D. Sankey from 1840 to 1908, and the scripture reference for the hymn itself is Psalm 94, verse 22. And the scripture reading for this hymn is from Psalm 32, verse 7, which reads, Thou art my hiding place. Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance. Ira D. Sankey's influence on modern gospel hymnody is difficult to measure. It would be most impossible to complete an evangelistic campaign or a Bible conference today without using at least one hymn written, published, or made popular by him. In all, Sankey contributed his musical talents to the writing of more than 80 gospel songs, as well as compiling more than 10 hymn books and other musical volumes. Toward the end of his life, Sankey became aware that his name was appearing on too many songs, so he began using a pseudonym. The one he chose was Ryan A. Dykes, a name which appeared on a number of his hymns. The letters for this pseudonym, when rearranged, spell Ira D. Sankey. Ira Sankey was born of Scotch-Irish ancestry in 1857. His family moved to Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where he attended high school and joined the Methodist Church. He began his first choir work and music ministry. His strong baritone voice soon attracted such attention that crowds would come to hear him sing. In 1860, Sankey enlisted in the 12th Pennsylvania Regiment. While in the Army, he frequently led the singing for religious services. However, the idea of devoting his life to the music ministry did not seem feasible to him. Upon his return from the service, he became a clerk with the Internal Revenue Service. In 1870, Ira Sankey was sent as a delegate to the YMCA convention in Indianapolis, Indiana, where he met for the first time he noted evangelistic Dwight L. Moody. The group singing during the meetings had been extremely poor. Finally, the suggestion was made to have Mr. Sankey lead. Immediately, there was a new spirit and enthusiasm injected into the gathering. Sankey has left the following account of this initial meeting with the evangelist. As I drew near Mr. Moody, he stepped forward, took me by the hand, and looked at me with that keen, piercing fashion of his, as if reading my very soul. Then he said abruptly, "Where are you from?" "Pennsylvania," I replied. "Are you married?" "I am." "How many children do you have?" "2." "What is your business?" "I am a government officer." "Well, you have to give it up." I was much too astonished to make any reply and went on speaking as if the matter had already been decided. "I have been looking for you the last 8 years. You have come to Chicago, and you'll have to come to Chicago and help me in my work." After several months of prayerful indecision, Sankey resigned his government position and moved to Chicago with his family to begin his fruitful ministry with the evangelist, and later become known as the father of the gospel song. For nearly 30 years, Sankey and Moody were inseparable in the work of the gospel, both in this country and throughout Great Britain. Sankey's smooth, cultured ways complemented and compensated for Moody's rough manner, poor grammar, and impulsiveness. They were often referred to as the David and Jonathan of the gospel of ministry. Through Ira D. Sankey, though he had little or no professional voice training, his voice was described as exceptionally strong baritone of moderate compass. An English newspaper once wrote the following review: "As a vocalist, Mr. Sankey has not many equals. Possessed of a voice of great volume and richness, he expresses with exquisite skill and pathos the gospel message in words very simple but replete with love and tenderness, and always with marked effect on the audience. It is, however, altogether a mistake to suppose that the blessing which he attends Mr. Sankey's efforts is attributed only or chiefly to the fine voice and artistic expression. They no doubt are very attractive and go far to move the affections and gratify the taste for music, but the secret of Mr. Sankey's power lies not in his gift of song, but in the spirit of which the song is only the expression." Another writer commented as follows regarding Sankey's manner of singing: "There was something about his baritone voice that was enormously effective. He had a way of pausing between lines of the song, and in that pause the vast audience remained absolutely silent." Generally, Sankey accompanied himself on a small reed organ, singing simply, but with careful enunciation and much feeling and emotion. Often, however, there was an intense opposition to his human composure hymns, and the use of an organ in a service, especially in the meetings in Scotland, where some of the church conservative Presbyterian Scots spoke of Sankey's kist of whistles, and how they believed that there was a devil in each pipe of that organ. Moody often tried to relieve the tension by explaining to the audience that Sankey's organ was only a very small one, and besides that, he would add, the Psalms were written under the old dispensation and really not meant for people to sing under new dispensation. This argument would amuse and soothe some, but it did not always satisfy all. Though there were great numbers of individuals converted through Christ in these meetings in Scotland, many of these believers still found it difficult to accept the new type of rhythmic gospel music employed by Sankey. The story is told of one meeting in which Sankey had just started a solo when a woman's shrill voice rang out from the gallery, and she made her way to the door crying, "Let me out! Let me out!" What would John Knox think of the like of you? This woman's abhorrence of gospel music was not hers alone. What she expressed was felt by many of the older Scottish Christians. Another story is told of a troubled Scot who visited his pastor after hearing Sankey sing and said, "I cannot do with those hymns. They are all the time in my head. I cannot get them out. The Psalms never troubled me that way." The wise pastor replied, "Very well then, I think you should keep the hymns." A Shelter in the Time of Storm was one of the typical easily sung rhythmical songs that Sankey used extensively in these campaigns. As the meetings progressed throughout the British Isles, Sankey and his gospel music became increasingly respected and accepted. The following paragraph appeared in one of the British papers near the close of the meetings. "Mr. Moody is very fortunate in having such a colleague as Mr. Sankey. He has enriched evangelistic work by something approaching the discovery of a new power. He spoils the Egyptians of their finest music and consecrates it to the service of the tabernacle. Music in his hands is more than that. It has yet been the handmaid of the gospel of the voice of the heart. We have seen many stirred and melted by his singing. Before a word has been spoken, indeed, his singing is just a powerful, distinct, and heart-toned way of speaking that seems often to reach the heart by a short cut, when mere speaking might lose the road." Not only is Ira Sankey regarded as America's most influential evangelistic musician, but he is also noted for having his publishing and promotion of gospel music. His sacred songs and solos, published in England, sold more than 8 million copies and is still in print. Also in collaboration with Philip P. Bliss and other gospel musicians of that time, he produced such popular works as Gospel Hymns and Sacred Songs, Gospel Hymns number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and the entire collected gospel hymns, numbers 1 through 6, in 1894. The royalties and profits from these publications did much to finance the various campaigns conducted by Moody and Sankey. Other popular gospel hymns by Ira Sankey include "Trusting Jesus," "Hiding in Thee," "The 90 and 9. Additional popular hymns contributed by Sankey are "Under His Wings, I Am Safely Abiding," "For You I Am Praying," and "Faith is the Victory." The text for "A Shelter in the Time of Storm" was written by an English pastor, Vernon J. Charlesworth. In 1869, Charlesworth was appointed headmaster of Charles Spurgeon's Stockwell Orphanage. In 1885, Ira Sankey copyrighted the text with his music and the refrain, which he added, entitled the new hymn, My God is the Rock of My Refuge, based on Psalm 94:22. But the Lord is my defense, and my God is the rock of my refuge. Sankey included this hymn in his publication of sacred songs and solos, as well as in Gospel Hymns number 5, My Life and the Story of the Gospel Hymns. Sankey has written this account regarding a shelter in the time of storm. I found this hymn in a small paper published in London called The Postman. It was said to be a favorite song of the fishermen on the north coast of England, and they were often heard singing it as they approached their harbors in the time of storm, as the hymn was set to a weird minor tune. I decided to compose one that could more easily be sung by the people. To realize the worth of the author, we need to feel the wrath of the storm. That quote is unknown as to who said it. I never met with a single instance of adversity, which I have not in the end seen was for my God. I have never heard of a Christian on his deathbed complaining of his afflictions. Alexander M. Proudfit said that. As sure as God puts his children into the furnace of affliction, he will be with them in it. That was said of Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Then one parting note here, fear tomorrow. I do not fear tomorrow, for I have lived today, and though my course is stormy, my pilot knew the way. I do not fear tomorrow, if the sails set east or west, on sea or safety, in harbor, in him secure I rest. That was a poem by Phyllis Michael. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit longer than normal, but it's nice to hear the different stories about the people that wrote the hymns. So until our next More Hymn Stories, number 3, According to Thy Gracious Word, will be our next episode. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll see you real soon. Bye for now.